Uh, okay, yeah. So welcome to our Clean Classrooms for Carolina Kids contractor training on the lead-based paint and asbestos sections. My name is Kelly Hoffman. I am the co-project manager of those sections, and I'm going to pass it over to Andrea to introduce herself and get us started.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm Andrew McWilliams, and I am the other co-project manager for the lead-based paint and asbestos section of this program. So we have a lot of information to cover today. So with our agenda, we are going to do a brief overview of the process. We're going to touch on facility enrollments and also move into non-binding cost estimate, job request, job assignments, and then into invoicing. And then after that, like Kelly said, we will leave about 45 minutes for question and answers. So process overview. We're going to pick this up after a facility has completed enrollment. So we've received their survey, we've reviewed their survey, and we have determined that we need to do a job request for either an on-site visit or a document review. So we'll send out a non-binding cost estimate. You'll submit that back to us. We'll review it, and then we'll sign a job to one contractor. Once you accept that job and you complete it, your deliverable will be sent to RTI, which could include an on-site visit report, results and recommendations, and then also your invoicing goes to us as well. And then we, in turn, review it for completeness and approval, and then we'll pass it on to the facility for them to review the results and determine if they need to restrict access to any identified hazards or mitigate. And from there, they will work with the state on any type of reimbursement for mitigation costs. And so one key component about this program is it's such a large program and it's communication. So it starts with our RTI administration portal, where we're exchanging information with the facilities and gathering documents, gathering the information you guys need to do your jobs. And in turn, we're communicating with the contractors, which also includes the laboratories. With all that information is posted on the facility data mapper, which is a publicly accessible website. So on to facility enrollments. One thing to keep in mind about facility enrollments, each section, whether it be lead and water, lead-based paint, or asbestos, are all different surveys. So the facilities have to complete 3 independent surveys because they're all asking for different information. So some of the information that we are gathering in these surveys is the primary contact and address information, their building size and age of the buildings, any type of demographics, they've had any inspections, previous inspections, they have any concerns about exposures, past and planned building renovations, if they do have a preference on a contractor, and also by what questions they answer and how they answer them, what documents they are required to upload into the portal. And then once we've received their enrollment surveys, we've reviewed them for completeness. They're moved into 3 different areas. They can either gain a building age exemption, we'll move them to an on-site visit, or if they give us some previous inspection documentation, we'll have to perform a documentation review. And then once all those sections have been completed, like I said, all that information is uploaded into the facility data mapper, and there it is publicly accessible to see any type of results that they have, any type of hazards that were identified, recommended response actions, and then any type of, if there was an on-site visit, that report will also be accessible. And just a reminder about mitigation and abatement. The facilities are responsible for the mitigation and abatement activities, not RTI. The costs for mitigation, some are reimbursable for DHHS, and we'll have to determine which costs are actually reimbursable. The schools do have a match cost, but the child care centers do not. So just some of the metrics that have been happening with the facility enrollments. This is cumulative since September. As you can see, It was kind of a slow start with the enrollments, getting everybody used to the system, but it has really picked up. So currently we have over 500 facility enrollments for both combined lead-based paint and asbestos. So keep in mind, that's one for lead-based paint, one for asbestos, and that's a combined total of over 500. So we have a lot going on right now. So that's why we want to get everyone prepared for on-site visits or documentation reviews. So next I will turn the non-binding cost estimates and job request over to Kelly, and then I'll be back for the invoicing section.
That's great. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, so now we've gone through kind of an overview of the facility enrollment process. We're going to move into some more detailed steps for the contractor, so for all of you. And we'll start that off with non-binding cost estimates and job requests. So we're going to break down the overview that Andrea covered into those more detailed steps throughout the rest of the training. And this is beginning with the job request process. So first, after a facility enrolls, we review the enrollment surveys to determine if a contractor job is needed. And if a job is needed, we'll send a non-binding cost estimate request to 1 to 3 contractors. There are 2 types of jobs that can be requested with a non-binding cost estimate: an on-site visit, where the contractor will perform a visit to the facility to assess for hazards, or a documentation review, where the contractor will review the facility's prior inspection documentation and submit a recommendation for next steps. And we'll cover both types of jobs in more detail in the job assignments section. So we've been getting a lot of questions from you on how we will be determining which contractors receive non-binding estimate requests for a specific job. So we're listing them for you here. The first thing we will be looking for is if the facility has a preferred contractor, followed closely by pre-existing relationships with facilities that were entered by the contractor in the company verification survey. It is not our intent to disrupt these relationships, so we will aim to maintain these whenever possible. So after that, we will also be looking at the service area and geographic proximity, as well as the number of credentialed staff available to complete the job and current workload. So essentially, how many jobs you are working on compared to the number of people you have to do the work. And for these reasons, please make sure to keep your company verification survey up to date with your facility relationships, your number of staff, your credentials, service area, etc., because these will impact your job requests. You will not be assigned facilities outside of your service area. That's the little map here, so make sure that is up to date. Okay, and second step, we have contractor reviews the job and submits or rejects the non-binding cost estimate by the due date. So you will soon see this additional functionality in your portal to review non-binding cost estimates. This is an admin-only functionality, so only the company portal administrators in your company will have access to all of the information that we're covering in this entire job request section. When a non-binding cost estimate request is sent to your company, you will receive an email notification, and you'll also see it in your cost estimate table shown here. You will also see a job number associated with the cost estimate request. And we want to cover this from the very beginning, that the job number is extremely important because it's how we're linking everything across all of the portals that Andrea described earlier. So you will see it everywhere in your portal. We want to make sure you don't forget it. So we follow a standard naming scheme where the first 3 letters relate to the job type. So here AIS stands for asbestos inspection. The second 3 letters are for the facility type, so CCF for childcare facility, and the last 6 digits are a running number. So the other job types will have different abbreviations, such as LRA for lead risk assessment, and facility type can also be SCH if it's a school. Also on this table, you will see the date the cost estimate request was sent to your company and the due date, which is always 3 business days after the receive date. If you do not submit the estimate by the due date, it will be automatically rejected. All right, so from this table, if we select the view button here, we will see our job preview page, which gives you access to everything you need to submit the cost estimate. The survey that Andrea mentioned earlier is available to you from this page, which you can view with the View Survey button. And from here, you can review all of the information and documentation provided by the facility that will be helpful for your estimate, such as the location of the facility's age, size, schedule, etc. And you can also access any documents that were uploaded directly in the survey under this document upload section. The documents will also show up in a table in the portal for you here too. And all childcare facilities provide us with a property tax record during enrollment, which can be helpful for the layout, understanding the layout of the facility. So once you've finished viewing the facility's information, you can select the Submit Cost Estimate button shown here. And that will bring you to the cost estimate form. This is a fairly straightforward form. We tried to make it as simple as possible. You will be required to put in the number of staff hours you estimate will be needed to complete the job. And these are based off of the staff types we requested in the RFQ. The labor costs will then be populated using the approved hourly rates provided to RTI in the RFQ submission. And just as a reminder, those did include ODCs. So we have all of those pre-populated in your portal already based on what you've provided to us and what has been approved. And then you'll enter the travel costs as needed depending on the facility location. And we are encouraging the use of standard government mileage and per diem rates. And then the total cost here will be summed for you. So just to repeat what I said, you'll enter your hours. You'll see the labor cost based off of the hourly rates you gave to us. You'll add your travel costs, and then the total cost will be summed as a sum of the labor costs and travel costs. And you'll also be asked to provide your earliest date of availability to perform the facility job. We understand that this is subject to change based on the facility's schedule, but it is helpful for us just to have a rough estimate of when the job can be completed by. If you would like to provide any additional information, you can do so in the comments down here just by adding a comment. And then you will also be able to reject a cost estimate from the same form by selecting this Reject Cost Estimate button. And that means that your company will not be considered for the job. And as a reminder, please ensure you have adequate availability, adequate number of trained and credentialed staff, and the resources needed to complete the job. Contractors that do not have adequate availability or resources can choose to reject the non-binding cost and time estimate, as I mentioned. Okay, and then after the due date, RTI will review all of the submitted estimates and send the job request to one selected contractor. First, we review the estimates and request updates as needed. Our team is able to reopen the estimate if we do have any questions or any changes are needed. You will receive an email as well if updates are requested, and you'll also see the status change in your cost estimates table in the portal. Once a contractor is selected, they will receive a congratulations email and they'll see a job request in the portal. And this job request must be accepted or rejected within 2 weeks, or it will be automatically rejected and assigned to a different company. Once a job is accepted, any other contractors who submitted cost estimates for the same job will be notified that a different contractor was selected. And finally, the selected contractor can officially accept or reject the job request. So here is a view in the portal where you will see any job requests come in. So accepting the job request means that the job is officially assigned to your company. You are able to submit a cost estimate and then reject the job request if for whatever reason you decide you do not want the assignment. But once you do accept this job request, the decision is final. your company will be responsible for performing the requested services for that facility. And if you do accept the job request, the job automatically moves into the job assignments tab here, where all of your staff, admin or not, can view and interact with the jobs. And once again, you'll see that job number is being carried along with the job. The job assignment view looks very similar to the job preview with some additional tabs depending on the job type. The enrollment survey is still accessible, and also the cost estimate that was approved can be accessed here, although only by company portal administrators. So normal staff who aren't admins they'll have the same page, but they'll only see this enrollment information box there. There is also a section to assign staff to each job if you would like to use this functionality, but it is not required by our program. And then for the remaining tabs in this job view, we'll cover that in our next section. So that brings us to job assignments, and we will start with on-site visits. Similar to the previous section, we're going to break down the on-site visit process into some more detailed steps. The first step after receiving a job assignment for an on-site visit is to schedule the visit directly with the facility. To schedule the on-site visit, contractors should reach out to the facility's primary contacts by phone or email and schedule the on-site visit at a day and time that works for both your company and the facility. You'll also need to enter the scheduled start date as soon as the on-site visit is scheduled with the facility, and also select the laboratory you plan to use if any samples are collected during the visit. And this will be done directly in the portal, which we'll go through now. So all of this information can be found in the scheduling tab, the facility's contacts, which ones are primary, you'll see here, and in the enrollment survey, we do let them know that if they are a primary contact, that a company will be reaching out if they need an on-site visit to schedule that visit. We also have scheduled start date here. We use this for tracking purposes to ensure that jobs are not lost. So you will receive an email notification if this date is not entered in a timely manner. And also the laboratory here, you can select that. We understand that things change, so this is non-binding, but just gives us an idea of which laboratory you may use, depending on the facility's location or whatever other variables you use to select a laboratory. And then also completed date down here helps us identify if there are any issues with getting the lab results, again, in a timely manner. Okay, so after the on-site visit is scheduled, step 2 is the contractor conducts the on-site visit. There are 3 types of asbestos on-site visits. I showed those earlier on the job type slide. So most of this information is not new to you all. We have an asbestos inspection, which will be conducted when a facility has not had a prior asbestos inspection that meets the rule requirements. For childcare facilities, only licensed areas should be inspected. So if the facility operates out of a shared building, you will not need to inspect areas that are not officially part of the childcare facility. The second type of asbestos on-site visit is an asbestos reinspection, which will be conducted at schools that have not had an AHERA reinspection that meets the rule requirements within the past 3 years. These will be consistent with the reinspections you are already used to performing, but with an added requirement of resampling any asbestos-containing material that is less than 10% asbestos and is also damaged. So that's assessment code 1 through 4. And samples can also be collected if new suspect material is identified that was not previously sampled. We also anticipate a limited number of asbestos site verifications, which will occur when a facility's prior inspection or reinspection meets the rule requirements, but damaged asbestos-containing materials were identified and have not been addressed. In these cases, you would go on site to verify the condition of those specific hazards. And of course, all asbestos on-site visits will need to be performed in accordance with state and federal regulations. I do also want to note that NESHAP inspections are outside of our scope of work. So inspections for capital renovations or repairs can be reimbursed by DHHS, but facilities are still required to enroll in our program to meet the facility-wide inspection requirements under the new state rule. And similarly, we have two types of lead-based paint on-site visits. Lead risk assessments will be conducted when a facility has not had a prior lead risk assessment within the past 3 years that meets the rule requirements. We expect that field portable XRF instruments will be used to record lead measurements for lead-based paint, and that samples of paint chips, soil, and settled dust will also be collected where an XRF measurement cannot be made. And again, only licensed areas of childcare facilities should be assessed. A limited number of lead site verifications may also be conducted when a facility had a prior lead risk assessment within the past 3 years that meets the rule requirements, but lead hazards were identified and have not been addressed yet. And the goal of these site verifications will be to assess the condition of the specific lead-based paint hazards that were identified. And all lead risk assessments and site verifications through our program should be performed in the same manner as for a child-occupied facility, following HUD guidelines and federal regulations, regardless of the age of occupants in the building. For both asbestos and lead-based paint on-site visits, you must receive approval from RTI if there is a need to change the cost estimate. If a cost estimate revision is not approved, we cannot guarantee that the requested amount will be paid during invoicing. We understand that this will happen from time to time, as the situation on site might be different than the information provided by the facility, but we will keep a record of each contractor's estimates and revisions, and may use this record to determine future work potential if revisions are often requested, despite having all of the information up front. If you do need to request a revision, you can do so by selecting this Create Revision button that will show up on the bottom of your current cost estimate for accepted jobs in the portal. And once you select that button, you'll see this, it'll change to a cost estimate revision, and you will be required to provide a justification before submitting as to why you need to update the costs. Also, we have flyers that you can download and distribute for if you're getting questions about our program while you're on site. These will be available to you in your portal, and we can also mail copies to you directly if that's needed. Once the on-site visit is completed, the next step is to submit any samples that were collected to an RTI contracted laboratory. Any collected bulk asbestos samples must be submitted to one of our contracted NIVLab accredited laboratories. That's UMSL, Eurofins, or SAI. They will be billing RTI directly for the sample analysis. And then all paint, chip, soil, and settled dust samples from lead on-site visits should be submitted directly to RTI for analysis by our environmental lead laboratory. We are not requiring any consistent sampling IDs or naming schemes, so you can use what works for you. However, please make sure to include the facility job number on the COC form so we can match the results back to the correct job in the portal. The turnaround time will be 3 days for asbestos and 5 days for lead-based paint, but we anticipate these might extend a little bit longer at the beginning while the labs are getting used to the new processes with our portal. And there is no cost for shipping the samples, but you are responsible for supply costs. For asbestos on-site visits, you should contact the RTI contracted laboratory you plan to use for their COC and shipping labels that will provide you with free shipping on all samples collected under our program. And we can also share this information as needed. Feel free to reach out to us. And you can download RTI's lead-based paint COC and shipping labels for free shipping directly from the portal as well. And then again, another reminder that not including the job number on your COC may delay results and cause your company to be incorrectly invoiced for the samples. So make sure that that's on there. Back into the portal, we do have a tab here for lab reports. For asbestos on-site visits, the RTI contracted laboratory will send samples directly to the contractor and to RTI for a quality assurance check, which will be a quick verification of results. And once results pass QA, they will appear, the report will appear in the table here. For lead-based paint, the report will also show up in the table after passing our quality assurance check. So please make sure to use the QA'd version of the lab report found in this table to include in your on-site visit reports for both asbestos and lead-based paint. And finally, the contractor will upload the deliverables in the portal to complete the job. Prior to describing the deliverables, we want to clarify the definition of hazards under the new state rule. As I briefly mentioned earlier, an asbestos hazard is any asbestos-containing material categorized as assessment code 1 through 4, so essentially damaged materials. And the definition of a lead-based paint hazard under the new rule is the same as existing state rules, a condition that is likely to result in exposure to lead-based paint, soil, or dust at a concentration that constitutes a lead poisoning hazard. And you are all familiar with these concentrations shown on the slide. So what's important to note here is that properly managed asbestos-containing material and lead-based paint in good condition is not considered a hazard under this program. And yes, this is important because the new rule requires facilities to restrict access to any identified hazards until they are mitigated or abated. If the facility chooses not to mitigate or abate, they must restrict access to the hazard indefinitely. But there is no requirement to restrict access to or mitigate or abate asbestos-containing materials or lead-based paint that is in good condition. Our program deliverables are designed with this in mind. We want to help the facilities understand what is required of them as a result of what is identified during the on-site visit. We are providing templates for on-site visit reports, which will incorporate standardized forms and a consistent layout, but we'll also include the ability to individualize the summary report portion. So we require specific sections be included in the summary report, such as results, recommendations, etc. But you are free to use your existing report language as long as the broad requirements are met. One of the standardized forms that will need to be included in the on-site visit reports is the state's NC ARPA Hazard Assessment and Response Actions form, which you will fill out with only the hazards that were identified at the facility and the recommended response actions. And in addition to providing us the on-site visit report, you will also be required to enter the hazards into our portal directly and in an electronic version of the same form. And this will allow us to display the hazards directly on our facility data mapper for facilities and for the public, anyone else, to easily view the results of the on-site visit. And back to the portal, the final tab on this on-site visit job view is for submitting your deliverables. So first you will be asked if any hazards were identified at the facility, and if so, you will be required to enter the hazards in the table. A very similar version of this table is what we will be showing on our facility data mapper, just a simplified version. And as you're seeing here, there's a reminder that this table should match the NC ARPA Asbestos Hazard Assessment and Response Actions form that is completed and included in your on-site visit report. You will also be asked to upload the on-site visit report, and there is a link here directly in the portal to our program requirements for these reports, where the templates and instructions are available. And after submitting your deliverables, our team will complete a QA to ensure the program requirements were met. And if any changes are needed, we will reopen your job and you will receive an email as well as see the pending requests in your job assignments table. All right, and that brings us to the other type of job assignment, which is a documentation review. If a facility has already completed a prior asbestos inspection, re-inspection, or lead risk assessment, they can upload their documentation in the portal for a review to determine if it meets the criteria to be exempted from the required on-site visit under the new law. While completing the enrollment surveys, facilities are asked to provide specific documentation depending on the information that they enter. If a school has already had an AHERA asbestos inspection, they are asked to provide us with their asbestos management plan that at minimum it contains the most recent reinspection report, the sampling results associated with any remaining asbestos-containing materials, the most recent periodic surveillance report, and any mitigation or abatement records from the last 3 years. And childcare facilities with a prior asbestos inspection are asked to upload their inspection report and any mitigation or abatement records from the last 3 years. And then for lead-based paint, facilities are asked to provide their most recent lead inspection or risk assessment report and any mitigation or abatement records from the last 3 years. After the facility uploads their documentation, RTI assigns a documentation review job to receive recommendations from the contractor on next steps for the facility. During an asbestos documentation review job for a school, the assigned contractor will review the documentation and complete a survey in the portal to recommend either an exemption, meaning that all requirements were met and no on-site visit is required, or recommend that an inspection, re-inspection, or site verification is still needed. And we do have guidelines available in the portal that detail all of the requirements that must be met for an exemption and when a facility would need each of the different on-site visit types. If the information or documentation needed to make a recommendation is incomplete, then we do expect that you contact the facility to obtain the additional information or documentation needed for upload into the portal. For childcare facilities, the potential next steps include an exemption, inspection, or site verification. These are slightly different requirements for childcare facilities compared to schools, so they do have their own set of guidelines. And for a lead-based paint documentation review, the recommendation options include an exemption, lead risk assessment, or site verification for all facilities. Although facilities are asked to upload documentation associated with any prior lead-based paint inspections, these will not be counted towards a prior inspection exemption. According to the new rule, it has to be a lead risk assessment performed by a certified lead risk assessor to meet the exemption criteria. If the contractor recommends an exemption, the facility will be notified that no further action is required. If the contractor recommends an on-site visit is still needed and we agree with the recommendation, then we will assign the on-site visit type using the non-binding cost estimate process that we already went through. Typically, the contractor that completed the initial documentation review will be assigned to that on-site visit if costing and availability are acceptable. Okay, and that brings us to invoicing. So Andrea's gonna pop back on.
All right, invoicing. Please do keep in mind that only the portal company administrator will have access to the invoicing section in the portal. So once the job has been submitted and RTI has done the QA check on the job and is deemed complete and we have approved it, then that job can be moved into invoicing. So under the invoices tab, this will be the view that you'll see. The table lists out invoices that have already been submitted for previous jobs and their status. If they've been approved, they're under review, and you can kind of keep track of those. To submit an invoice, a new invoice, you hit the green tab above the table, and it'll move you to this this view. This view will show all the jobs that are available for invoicing, but please do keep in mind, as I said, you can only submit an invoice. It'll only be available once we have deemed it complete and we have approved it. And then you can move into submitting an invoice. So you'd hit that blue button to submit an invoice. And the next step would be to upload your invoice and for approval. So to do that, once you hit that submit invoice button, you'll be moved to this view, which is your pre-filled non-binding cost estimate. And keep in mind that all invoicing does have to go through the portal. And this is where you will do match costs against your uploaded invoice. And then at the bottom at the doc is where you upload your documentation. So once you're ready, once everything matches up between your approved non-binding cost estimate, you'll upload your PDF. And there are minimum requirements for these invoices, which we talked about in the RFQ. And those are the job number, which Kelly talked about through and through. We have to have that job number to match it back to the facility, and we're able to approve everything. Also, your purchase order number, and then an invoice number, but that is assigned by you, just whatever you want to call it, an invoice date, and then also you'll have a line items for your quantity, your price per unit, and then total that line item. And then you also have a total at the bottom for the full invoice. And then of course, keeping your company information updated. So once we've received your submitted invoice, it moves into our approval process, in which we review it, make sure everything is accurate, make sure everything is cleared so that we can push it through our accounting system. And if there are any discrepancies, or we will request that information is needed. We are batching invoices. We will be batching invoices, I should say, the first and third of every Friday of the month. And then I know right now our terms of net payment are 60 days. We are trying to speed that process up by batching these invoices. When you did register in Supplier Gateway, they did ask for how you want to receive your funds, if you want to receive them electronically or by paper check. Please keep in mind that electronic funds, once the invoice has been approved for payment, that is a next day payment. And then if we have to do a paper check, there is a delay of 7 to 10 business days to receive that paper check. So now we will move into Q&A as the presentation has been completed.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, so go ahead. If you have any questions, you can put those in the Q&A box, or also feel free to raise your hand and we can mute you so that you can ask your question live. Oops, sorry.
And Kelly, you can stop the recording now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.